They wanted me to sell the orphaned Apache boy, but I became the father he never had. The story begins with a single choice that would forever change two broken lives. When I first saw him, he was no more than a child of 7 or 8, his eyes dark as midnight, carrying a pain that was far too heavy for someone so young. He had been left alone after raiders had swept through his village, taking what they could and destroying what they couldn't. The boy was brought into town by men who saw him as nothing more than property, a way to earn a few dollars from someone desperate for labor or cruel enough to exploit his vulnerability. They tried to hand him to me like one would a horse or a mule. "Take him, sell him," they said. "He's worth something in the right market." But as I looked into the child's eyes, I saw not a price, not a burden, not an object. I saw a boy who had lost everything, his family, his home, his world. And yet he stood silently, holding back tears he refused to let fall. Something stirred inside me then, something I hadn't felt in years. I told them no. I told them I wasn't going to sell him. I told them he was coming with me. At first, the boy didn't understand. He looked at me suspiciously, as though I were just another man waiting to betray him. I gave him food, water, and a safe place to sleep, but he stayed quiet, curled in the corner of my cabin, watching every move I made. His silence was heavy, like a wall he had built to protect himself from more pain. I didn't push him. I simply let him be, hoping that one day he might trust me. Days turned to weeks, and slowly, tiny cracks began to show in that wall. I caught him watching me work the horses, and when I handed him a brush, he took it hesitantly. He didn't speak, but he stayed beside me, brushing the mare's coat with careful, gentle strokes. It was the first time I saw the spark of life in his eyes. His name, I eventually learned, was Dakota, friend to all, though at that time he had no one. Life was not easy for us. People whispered, judged, and some even threatened. A white man raising an Apache child was not something the town looked kindly upon. More than once, men came to me with offers of money, insisting I hand the boy over. "You'll bring trouble on yourself," they warned. "Better to let him go before it's too late." But each time, I refused. I wasn't raising him for them. I was raising him because my heart had chosen him as my son. Dakota began to test me in his own ways. He would sneak out at night, disappearing into the hills as though daring me to chase after him. And I always did. I'd find him sitting beneath the stars, clutching a necklace that must have belonged to his mother. I never scolded him, instead, I sat beside him until he was ready to return. One night, he whispered his first words to me, "Why did you not sell me?" I remember the lump that rose in my throat. I told him, "Because you are not something to be sold. You are a boy. You are my boy now." His eyes glistened, and though he didn't answer, I felt the bond between us grow stronger. The world around us didn't make things easy. One winter, sickness swept through the settlement, and Dakota fell ill. I stayed by his side for nights without sleep, feeding him broth and keeping the fire burning. At one point, I feared I would lose him, and the thought of that nearly broke me. But he fought through it, just as he had fought through every trial before. When his fever broke, he clutched my hand tightly, and though he said nothing, I knew he had chosen me as his father in return. Over time, I taught him how to ride, how to read, how to mend fences and work the land. In return, he taught me patience, resilience, and the meaning of unconditional love. He laughed again, an unguarded laugh that filled the cabin with warmth I hadn't known in years. And for the first time, I began to believe we could truly be a family. But not everyone agreed. One spring, a group of men came riding hard, their faces set with anger. They demanded I hand Dakota over, claiming he had no place living with me. They accused him of being dangerous simply because of who he was. I stood my ground, placing myself between them and the boy. My voice shook with fury as I told them they would have to go through me first. The standoff was tense, but eventually, the men backed down, leaving threats in the air as they rode away. Dakota clung to me that night, and I promised him no one would ever take him from me. The years passed, and the boy I had once found trembling and alone grew tall and strong. He carried scars of his past, but he carried them with dignity, never letting them define him. The whispers in town never fully stopped, but people began to see what I had always seen, that he was not a burden, not a threat, but a gift. Some even began to respect the courage and kindness he carried in his heart. One evening, when he was nearly grown, Dakota stood before me, taller than I remembered, his voice steady and sure. "You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me a father when I thought I'd never have one again. You saved me." I tried to tell him that he had saved me too, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I embraced him, holding on as tightly as I had the first night I brought him home. I had once been asked to sell an orphan boy. Instead, I chose to love him. And in that choice, I found a son, a family, and a reason to keep fighting in a world that often forgets compassion. Love, I learned, is not born of blood but of choice, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give is simply to be the parent someone desperately needs. That boy became my son, and I became the father he never had. And that will forever be the proudest choice of my life.